Zhangzhu Jie Guaila. Welcome to Mooncakes and Tea, the Chinese American Museum's celebration of Mid-Autumn Moon Festival. Today, you are in for a treat. We have a tea demonstration from Yunhan Zhang from Valley Brook Tea. We'll hear a personal reflection from our friend Lily Liu, and we'll get a briefing on the traditions around the Moon Festival from Rita Shan. While all this is going on, I will plan on eating some delicious mooncakes around the corner, and we hope that you will be too. Today's event is made possible through the generous support of the Ruth H. Kuo and Rhoda Howe Memorial Foundation. Rita Shan is the founder of American Chinese Goodwill Exchange Services. She's been a community volunteer and leader for more than 30 years. She's a founding board member of the National China Garden Foundation and also the founder of the Friends of China Garden and the U.S. National Arboretum. Rita organized annual Chinese Mid-Autumn Moon Festivals and Chinese Lantern Festivals at the Arboretum from 2005 to 2010. And she's the co-founder of the U.S.-China Alliance and China Society. She served on the board of the Organization of Chinese American Women, OCAW, national chapter, and as president of the OCAW Virginia chapter, she really knows her stuff and we're anxious to hear from her. So please welcome Rita Shan.
Thank you, David. Thanks to everyone. And I am so happy to spend the Mid-Autumn Festival Day with you all today. Let me start with the introduction of Chinese festival. Let me share my screen with you. Okay, thank you, David.
Yeah.
Chinese Moon Festival is also well known as Mid-Autumn Festival. It is on the 15 days of the 8th month of the lunar calendar. And it is one of the 5 major Chinese festivals. And these 5 Chinese festivals are Chinese New Year, Chinese Lantern Festival, Qingming Festival. Qingming Festival is also called the Tongue Sweeping Festival, Dragon Boat Festival, and the Mid-Autumn Festival. The Mid-Autumn Festival is the second most important Chinese festival after the Chinese New Year. Next screen, please. The origin of the Mid-Autumn Festival goes back as early as 150 BC. It was recorded in the book of Zhou Li. And Zhou Li, the book was written during the Han Dynasty. In Zhou Li, it's said, in spring, on the vernal equinox day, worship the sun. In summer, on the summer solstice days, worship the earth. In autumn, on the autumnal equinox day, worship the moon. In winter, on the winter solstice days, worship the heaven. So since then, the nobles and also the literatis followed suit. The suit of watching the bright round moon in the sky, worship the full moon, and entrusting the feeling to the moon. This festival became a fixed festival in Tang Dynasty, and it was recorded in Tang Tai Zhong Li. The festival prevailed in Song Dynasty, Ming Dynasty, Qing Dynasty, and today. The legend of the Moon Festival, the Mid-Autumn Festival, are very rich. There are a number of folk stories talks about the Mid-Autumn Festival. Next, please. And here I listed the 4 folk stories about the Mid-Autumn Festival. The first one, which is the most famous one, is called Chang'e flying into the moon. Chang'e is a beautiful woman. She married an archer called Hou Yi. In ancient times, there are 10 suns. One day it shines simultaneously on Earth. It created scorching heat on Earth. So agriculture were all burned. Human beings are dying. Hou Yi was able to shoot down 9 suns and save the planet. Then he was rewarded with a forever live pill. He didn't want to take this pill because there's only one. It's only enough for one person. He did not want to take this pill to be separated from his beloved wife, Chang'e. So he gave it to her to put it away. Since Hou Yi shoot down 9 suns, he became very famous, and a lot of people want to come over to learn the archery from him. One day, an immortal person came to their house while Hou Yi was out hunting. He forced Chang'e to give him the pill. Chang'e was so frightened, so she swallowed. Then she started floating in the sky and flying to the moon. This is the story about Chang'e flying to the moon. The second story is about the jade rabbit. In ancient, the master of the universe is called Jade Emperor. One day, the Jade Emperor, distinguished himself as a poor man, asked monkey, otter, jackal, and the rabbit to give him the food. Monkey grabbed the fruit from the tree. Otter grabbed the fish. Jackal killed a lizard. The rabbit thought he could only grasp the grass, which is not enough food for human being. So he decided to offer his own body. He jumped into the fire the man started. The Jade Emperor was deeply touched. So he sent the rabbit to the moon. This is the story about the Jade Moon. The next is about Wu Gang cutting the laurel tree. Wu Gang made a mistake. So the Jade Emperor punished him, having to cut the laurel tree until the tree is completely taken down. Then he is forgiven. However, no matter how hard he cuts the tree grows right back up. So this is about Wu Gang cutting the laurel tree. The last one I'm going to introduce relating to how the mooncake came from. And this is a story about Yunhan Zhang, who is the founding emperor of Ming Dynasty. Zhu's troop came up with the idea, hiding the notes containing the date of the revolt in the mooncake, and then distributing the mooncake to the resistant forces. And this trick worked, and the rebel successfully took the capital of the Yuan dynasty. In celebration of this successful revolt, the emperor Yunhan Zhang ordered the mooncake to the people and to his soldiers. Since then, consuming mooncake became a thing to do on Mid-Autumn Festival. Next screen, please. And we're going to talk about solar turns relating to the Chinese Moon Mid-Autumn Festival. There are 24 solar turns based on the position of the sun in the zodiac. And the solar turns are the guide for ancient Chinese farmer to do the agriculture. The 24 solar turns up to today is still used by the Chinese people. The 24 solar turns not only reflects the climate, natural phenomena, agricultural productions. It also affects people's life, like the clothing, the food we eat, and the house we live, and also transportation. And there are 4 solar turns in the 8th and 9th months of the lunar calendar. And the Mid-Autumn Festival falls in between these 4 solar turns. The 4 solar turns are Bai Lu, in Chinese, Bai Lu, which is white dew. Qiu Fen, autumn midpoint. Han Lu, cold dew. Shuang Jiang, frost. The Mid-Autumn Festival falls in autumn midpoint. So the significance of the Mid-Autumn Festival in the terms of solar turns is after Mid-Autumn Festival, the temperature change from cool to cold because it's moving from Bailu, cold dew, to white dew to cold dew. So today, you hear the elderly tell you, after the Mid-Autumn Festival, you change your wardrobe. You will always bring a sweater with you when you go out. David, next slide, please. The traditional, I'm very sorry, this is there's a mistype. It's traditional custom of the Chinese Mid-Autumn Festival. The tradition of the Mid-Autumn Festival, the people return home having a bountiful dinner with family. So it is a family reunion. And after the dinner, people will sit in the yard together and watching the moon, admiring the moon, of course, eating the mooncake with the hot teas. And one of the popular fruit that people consume on Mid-Autumn Festival Day is the pomelo. Besides eating the mooncake, drinking the hot tea, admiring the moon, people also recite the poem, particular for those nobles and also the scholars. The Mid-Autumn Festival uses the moon's full moon to signify the union of people. It is a rich and precious cultural heritage for yearning for the hometown, the love for the loved ones, and wishing for a harvest and happiness. David, next, please. Since we'll talk about recite poems, there are many poems on Mid-Autumn Festival. And this one, the first one I'm going to introduce, it's probably the most famous poem on Mid-Autumn Festival. Chinese kids, since they are 2 years old, 3 years old, the family will have them start memorizing this poem. This poem is made of 4 sentences, as you can see that. And each sentence is composed of 5 Chinese words. And it is one of the typical style of the poem, the Chinese poem. It's made of 5 Chinese words. Another typical one is made of 7, okay? So this poem says, the moonlight in front the bed, suspected to be frost on the ground. Looking up, seeing the bright moon. Looking down, thinking of hometown. So the first 2 sentences describe the scene of the Mid-Autumn Festival, the night. And the last 2 sentences describe this person who's obviously was away from home. So he's feeling, his homesick feeling. Next, please. This second poem is also very well known. It is a longer poem, so I'm not going to go over the whole poem. But what's important, or the significance of this poem, is there are 2 sentences. It is mostly quoted in the love letters. And these 2 sentences I highlight in red. What it says is, I hope people can stay together for a very long time, even they are thousands of miles apart. They can enjoy the beautiful moon together, whether they're physically together or they're spiritually together. So this, as I said, this is most quoted in love letters. Next, please. Besides not just the poems, there are a lot of Chinese classical music, classical songs, and popular songs are talk about the Chinese Mid-Autumn, the Chinese Moon Festival. And the first one I listed here is, again, is probably the most famous one and the classical ones. And it is played by the Chinese instrument called the zither. I am going to click on, David, please click on this, and we're going to just play for a few seconds and to give you feeling of this music. Okay, thank you, David. Okay, we're just going to switch back to the slides. Okay, so we're going to skip the next one. The Moon is High. That's another popular classical songs related to the Chinese Moon Festival. You can later, when we publish this, you can listen on your own. The next one I wanted to introduce, this is a popular song. It was sang by a female singer. Her name is Deng Lijun. She was so famous back in the 80s and 90s, and she was famous not in Hong Kong, Taiwan, mainland China, and Japan. And this song I listed here is a very famous song of her. It's called The Moon Represents My Heart. And I'm not going to play the song, but I wanted to tell you the lyric of the song, the beginning of the lyric. On the beginning of the lyric, it says, you ask me how deep I love you. I do love you certain percentage. You should ask the full moon how much I love you. And the full moons represent my love to you. So that answers the question is 100%, right? Okay, so that's why this song was so popular and it was sang in Mid-Autumn Festival frequently. David, next slide, please. So I briefly introduced the origin and also the customs of the Chinese festival and also the folk story. So thank you very much. And if you need more information or you would like to talk about more about this, you can later send me the email. My email address, I think they're going to publish, but I'll just tell you that now. It's very simple. It's my first name, last name, without the period. So it's ritashan@gmail.com. Again, thank you. And I'm very happy to spend the time with you on the Mid-Autumn Festival Day. And tonight, when you look up to see the moon, making sure if you can find Chang'e, so you can try to see if you find an outline of a beautiful woman who is flying. Also finding the jade rabbit, who's pounding the herbal medicine. So that's a test for tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rita. I know I will be looking for those figures on the moon tonight, so thank you for that. My name is Louisa Sorkness. I'm part of the team here at the Chinese American Museum in Washington, D.C. For the next segment of our celebration, I'd like to introduce Mr. Yunhan Zhang, the owner of Valley Brook Tea. Yunhan represents his family tea business here in the U.S. As a tea producer, Valley Brook Tea produces and manufactures its own tea, teaware, furniture, and supplies for its DuPont Circle store. Valley Brook Tea aims to bring the most authentic tea and tea culture to DC. Thank you, and take it away, Yunhan.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. 中秋节快乐. This is our little tea table set up here. It's very basic, but very functional. So my name is Yunhan. Zhang Yunhan is my full name. I come from China, specifically Xi'an province. My family is in tea business. We are the tea producer. We make our own tea, teaware, and everything we use for our DC store. Our DC store is actually in DuPont Circle, pretty close to where we're here at the museum. So without further ado, let's start the process. While we are waiting for some hot water, I'd like to go over what exactly we have here. So this tool is called gaiwan. It's actually the primary tea making tool. It's not a cup. Usually you don't really drink tea from this cup. This is where we make tea. And then of course, this is what we, this is quite unique to us. We actually use a real tree leaf as a filter to filter out tea. Then a pitcher, we share tea from the pitcher to different teacups. Now, usually in a more fabulous setup of this tea set, we'll have more tools. But today, because we just want to do a tea presentation, we will focus on the main tools. As I understand, some of you already have those tea in your home, so if you are interested, you can just follow me or do it later today. For today's presentation, we will taste a oolong tea. This particular one is called Shui Xian. Now, what I want to do here is to present this tool. This is called Cha Zi. I actually made this one myself. The purpose of this one is simply to present dry leaves. Oolong tea leaves are significantly bigger than other leaves that we are used to, for example, green tea or black tea leaves, because oolong tea leaves are harvested 1 month later than black tea. For this particular tea, it is harvested in late April or early May. Now, compared to other tea categories such as green tea, which is harvested in March, black tea, which is harvested in mid-April, this one is about 15 or even 30 days late. So this explains the large size of the dry leaves. Now, what we want to do here is we actually pour the entire bag of tea leaves into gaiwan. The entire bag of a standard oolong tea is usually anywhere between 7 grams to 8 grams. If you have gaiwan, you can do the follows. You can actually put it in, dry, and shake. This, we can actually smell the aroma of dry leaves. For oolong tea, if you find a oolong tea in its dry leaf state, if it smells very dark, for example, if it smells like it has been burned, that means this oolong tea is over roasted. Okay, so here we are. And hot water, always cooked water to the boiling temperature, which is 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. What we want to do here is just pour water directly into gaiwan. Now, of course, here we want to do a presentation, so I'll wipe out all those bubbles. And just close the lid, don't wait, no steeping time, and directly pour this tea into the pitcher. Because we use a traditional tea where we're not doing something like English tea. The reason English tea needs to add milk, sugar, or honey into the tea is because they actually oversteep the tea leaves. This is the color of the tea. I don't know if you can see it clearly. It shouldn't be too dark. Now again, if you want to, you can keep doing this. When we pour water in, then pour tea out, this is called one infusion. For this tea, we can do anywhere between 10 to 13 infusions. 10 to 13 infusions is a little bit over 1 liter of tea. Now, after this, many people say this is where you actually smell the tea. So many people will actually open this and smell the cup. No, you don't want to do that. What you want to do is just open the lid and sniff the lid. This is where all the aroma go into because it goes up and captured by the lid. If you just smell the tea leaves, it will be too strong. You wouldn't be able to distinguish bad aroma from good aromas. Now, after you pour tea, you always want to keep tea leaves dry in this gaiwan. Pour every single drop from gaiwan into the pitcher, and do not leave tea leaves exposed in the air, or do not just close it all the way. What we want to do is to leave some air for tea leaves to breathe. So just leave a little bit crack like this. Now, of course, the pitcher is the name in English. In Chinese, we don't call it a pitcher or any other things. In Chinese, we actually have a lot of names for it. In our area, we primarily use 2 names. One name is Gongdao Bei. The second name is Cha Hai. Gongdao Bei, the literal meaning is a fair cup, which means using this cup, everybody at the tea table can get a fair amount or the same amount of tea. So this is called fair cup. Or the second name is very straightforward, Cha Hai, which means tea ocean or tea sea, because this is what holds all the tea. Now again, I'll do this once more. For people who are interested in how to handle this teaware, I can actually give you a couple tips. Many people, especially our customers, have complained to us that holding a gaiwan is too hard because it gets hot. Now, what you want to do is essentially you only need 3 fingers to hold this cup. You want to put your index finger and your thumb on the edge of the cup. Some people like to hold it from below. This is wrong because this is where hot water goes up to and you can get burned. What you want to is actually snap here, hold it in place. Then, I'm sorry, middle finger. This is in there. Then use your index finger to hold the lid. Then you just pour. When you approach gaiwan, do not drop it on top of, do not drop your hand on top of your gaiwan. What you want to do is approach it from the side. If you hold it from somewhat this high, what you end up is a very stiff gesture. It's very hard for you to pour. And what you want to do is to approach it from the side and lift it. This is how you go. Now, usually we will have some people to drink this tea, but today we actually just have me, so I'll finish some tea before we continue. For people who are interested, our store in DC only do traditional tea. which is green tea, black tea, oolong tea, and white tea. We do not have herbal teas. We do not have flower teas. We do not have bubble teas, obviously. The reason is tea is fantastic by itself. If you do it right, tea can present you a different experience. For example, if you want something that tastes fruity, you don't have to add flowers or fruits into the tea. There are just teas that naturally taste fruity. Now, if you want something floral, again, there are teas that taste floral. What we want to do here in DC is we want to bring the authentic experience to people. Before we open, many people ask us, will Americans, well, will people here in DC drink the traditional tea? Now, in my opinion, the answer is always yes, because many of them, actually, in my opinion, nearly all of them have never tried a good cup of tea. Now, the distance between the tea bag to the authentic tea, such as this, is just 1 cup and 1 sip. Now, of course, what we do here is extremely difficult because it takes a long time to get people to realize what we do. Actually, it takes a long time for people just to find us, especially in the middle of a pandemic. But this is exactly why we're here partnering with the museum to bring more people what we do and how to do it. Again, I'd like to present you one last time how to make this teaware work. Just pour water in, close the lid, lift it, then pour. Now, every single time, pour every single drop out of gaiwan. Otherwise, the water in this cup will keep the leaves cooking. Now, this is, I think, our 4th or 5th infusion already. I'd like to present you the color of the tea again. It should be the same as our first one. Now, if you are here, you can actually smell it. The aroma is exactly the same again. Now, finally, we'd like to show you something. Oh, sorry, some accidents here. For oolong tea, this is how you can assess the quality of a oolong tea from just the leaves here. If you bring the camera closer, this is the tea has been brewed for 4 or 5 times. It is still alive. It is still strong. I can twist it, I can fold it, I can bend it, I can do this. Then it still goes back. This shows the quality. It's like a person can do a lot of things under pressure. Tea leaves should behave in hot water as well. This will be some slightly bigger, which is a better example for what we're going to do now. So if you extend a brewed leaf here, you can actually find out it's still a whole leaf. Good quality oolong tea should always be a whole leaf. If you find your bag of oolong tea or black tea for this matter, or green tea or white tea, basically any type of tea that's actually in pieces, usually means it's not a good quality tea because it's usually fermented too hard or transported in a way that's too rough, so leaves are broken. Again, this is still a whole leaf here. Now I want to show you a different tea. I don't think we're going to drink this one, but I'd like to show you anyway. This is a black tea. Now, this is a great example of how different black tea is from a oolong tea. This is one standard oolong tea leaf. Look at the size of it. This is a standard black tea leaf. That's how small it is. The reason being, some black tea leaves are not exactly leaves. For example, this particular one is what we call 金骏眉. Jinjumei is not a tea. Jinjumei is actually a grade. So traditional black tea, such as Lamsan Souchong, is harvested with 1 bud and 2 leaves. This particular tea only uses the bud for tea making. This is why this is how big a leaf is, and this is how big the bud is. Now, taste-wise, black tea is sweeter because obviously the leaves are just smaller, more tender, more delicate. As a result, sweet. So yeah, if you are interested in learning more about tea and tea making, you can go on our website, www.valleybrooktea.com. We also have our social media on Instagram and Twitter, also at Valley Brook Tea. If you are interested in learning more about our business, and if you are in DC area, you are definitely very welcome to visit our store in DuPont Circle. You can find that find our address on Google Map or just a Google search away. So thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the museum for having me here once again.
Thank you, Yunhan. Every time I hear you speak about tea, I learn something new and gain a greater appreciation for the craft. Next, I'd like to introduce Lily Liu, who will be sharing some personal reminiscences of the Mid-Autumn Festival. Lily is AARP historian and Emirata at AARP, a spokesperson on family caregiving issues, a published translator, and a friend of CAMDC. Please share any of your own memories with us in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, as well as ask any questions of any of the panelists, Rita, Yunhan, or Lily alike, and we'll get to those after Lily is finished entertaining us with her memories. Take it away, Lily.
Thank you so much, Louisa. I must tease Mr. Zhang. In the Q&A later, we all must ask him, what should we drink to fight all this pandemic overeating? Hello, everyone. 中秋节快乐. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. I am so honored to have been invited by CAMDC, the Chinese American Museum in DC, to help kick off this part of our celebration, during which I hope a lot of people will share your personal reminiscences of this important festival. When I was thinking about what to say, I remembered that the French writer Marcel Proust, when he bit into that little Madeleine cake, it brought back so many memories of his life. For us Chinese throughout the world, biting into a mooncake, a yuebing, brings back such fond memories. For myself, a 1.5 generation immigrant in America, I recall as a child in Taiwan biting into that type of mooncake that has that salted duck egg yolk in the middle, right? My favorite. That egg yolk symbolized the full moon, the symbolism that Ms. Shan so eloquently shared with us. Today, while we must all practice this physical distancing, we can feel such comfort that all of us are gazing up at the same moon tonight when we go out and Shangyue, when we gaze at the moon. I want to thank CAMDC so much for bringing us all together to build community on Mid-Autumn Festival. Thank you so much, David, Jenny, Xin, and also Louisa. Thank you so much for this time to reminisce.
Thank you, Lily. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can bring up our panelists to answer them in turn.
I personally would love to know, do we have any countries other than the United States where folks are joining us from? It would be night in Asia, wouldn't it?
We have a question for Yunhan. Is there any tea that is traditional for the Mid-Autumn Festival? I guess the question is there a particular tea that is traditionally drank around the Mid-Autumn Festival, or?
Yes, personally, I think black tea is more traditional for the Mid-Autumn Festival simply for one reason. In Chinese tea, we don't really drink all the tea all the time in all the seasons. For example, I'm sure many of the viewers have this or have heard of this Chinese yin and yang theory. So in our tea production, we consider green tea as the more feminine or the colder kind of tea, and the black tea is the more masculine, warmer kind of tea. Now, Mid-Autumn Festival is, for example, today is October 1st. In many parts of China, especially North China, the weather is turning cold. Now, when the weather is cold, we want to drink something that warms us up, which is black tea. So for that one singular reason, I think black tea is more traditional for Mid-Autumn Festival.
Great. Another question for you, Yunhan. I've heard some teas are more expensive than champagne. Is that true? What makes it so expensive?
Yes. I can give you one example. As a tea producer, we're actually quite famous in oolong tea making. In oolong tea making in China today, there are 12 tea makers that are considered and recognized by the government and also the tea making community as the heirs to the non-material national heritage in oolong tea making. And one of them is Mr. Wang Guoxing, and Mr. Wang is our tea producer. Mr. Wang's tea is usually sold at $15,000 per pound. And every single year, our Mr. Wang only produces about 20 to 35 pounds of tea per year. So the reason that tea is very expensive is because tea is not just fresh leaves. Picking the leaves is only one of many steps in our tea production. And picking the leaves alone has many criteria. For example, in tea making, we do have premium tea fields and tea fields. Leaves from premium tea fields are very expensive. For Mr. Wang's tea, the $15,000 per pound tea, our cost of getting raw leaves, just the leaf alone, is about $200 to $300 per pound. And keep this in mind, 1 pound of fresh leaves does not equal to 1 pound of tea because fresh leaves have a lot of water in them. So after tea making, when tea leaves become dry, they lost a lot of weight. For our transfer ratio is about 8.5 pounds of fresh leaves to 1 pound of tea, which means to make 1 pound of tea, we need to harvest at least 8.5 pounds of fresh leaves. Now, 8.5 times 300, we're talking about thousands of dollars in the cost of acquiring fresh leaves alone. Then consider the tea making, consider the expertise, consider the brand value and everything. It can ramp up pretty easily. Oolong tea today in China is definitely one of the most expensive tea because oolong tea has the most difficult tea making. Green tea, for example, has 3 tea making steps. Black tea, about 11 tea making steps. Oolong tea, 17 tea making steps. To make a green tea, you can literally make a green tea in hours. To make a black tea is about a month. To make a oolong tea, it takes anywhere between 3 to 7 months. That's why there are some teas that are way more expensive than people's imagination.
Wow, who knew? I think Rita said she wanted to add something to that. Please, Rita.
Oh, I just want to add one thing for the previous question that they asked Yunhan, whether there's a typical tea that people drink on the Chinese Moon Festival. I don't know, I cannot answer that question, but I would like to add there is a typical wine that people consume on the Mid-Autumn Festival. And it's related to one of the story, that folk story I talk about. And this wine is called Yue Gui Jiu, which is the laurel wine. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. There were other questions as well. Let me scroll back a little bit. There was a question regarding tea tradition in India, where they traditionally drink it with milk. Is would you say that's a British influence, since that's not a tradition in China tea drinking, Yunhan?
So, of course, there are many explanations for why other parts of the world drink tea with milk or honey or sugar. So I'd like to go back to teaware. This is why we make tea today, right? It's quite small, it's quite delicate. There is a reason why the country China is called China, because we make it. So if you think about it, as a Chinese, we never call the country China, or we never call ourselves Chinese in our own language, right? We've always been something other than Chinese. The reason being, the entire country and the people are simply named after a thing the country produces. Now imagine shipping tea a couple hundred years ago to Europe is easy, right? You can just ship a shipload of tea, or you can ship it by land. By the time this tea gets to Europe, it's still okay. People can still drink it. The reason in Europe in early days, the tea drinking or the afternoon tea fashion was such a royal or expensive fashion, it was not because tea was hard to get. It was because teaware was hard to get. Imagine if you just ship 10 sets of this by sea. When it gets to, let's say, London, you can probably have only one single piece left because the ocean is rough. So what people end up doing is to create this very big, very bulky ceramic ware for our foreign market, which is, for example, European market. Now, when you have something so big, so bulky, you turn to add more tea leaves, then more water to the ware. Then tea leaves keep getting steeped, keep getting cooked. Eventually, what you end up is suffocating the leaves underwater. Now, if tea leaves die, they actually release a lot of what we call low boiling temperature fragrance. For example, caffeine is one of them. Then, as a result, the tea soup will taste a little bit dry, taste so dark that you need other ingredients to fix it. For example, milk. Milk is to combat a substance in tea called polyphenols. Polyphenols is the substance that makes a tea taste especially dry. Adding milk to it can sort of turn it back just a little bit. So a lot of adding milk, honey, and sugar is not really because people prefer to do that. It's that when you over steep tea leaves, the tea soup becomes hard to swallow. Then you need to add something to fix it. I think that's why in Europe, they drink tea with a lot of other stuffs, not because tea, it's because, in my opinion, teaware.
Great, thanks. A question for anyone really, are there any traditional activities for children during the Mid-Autumn Festival?
Well, so I'm from a city called Xiamen. It's in southern Fujian province. We have an activity which we were just talking about with people here. We have an activity called Bobing. You can Google it, or on Wikipedia is spelled B-O, then B-I-N-G. Essentially, it's a dice game. A lot of kids like it because the dice game corresponding to a lot of prize is more like a family game in our area on Mid-Autumn Festival night. So basically, you sit together, you have this giant bowl with five or six dice, 5 dice in this bowl. Then everybody takes turn to shake the dice. Then every single time you can get something out of it. There's a list of different size of the prize or award. So that is the thing we do in our area, and kids really love it. And of course, that's the only thing our people do.
Well, I was raised up in Taipei, Taiwan, in the old days. Okay, so I don't think there's a particular activity that the children do. As I talk about that, you know, usually after the dinner, you sit together with the family. So what the adults will ask the kids is to recite the poems or sing the songs. And the most typical activity is all the kids will sit together and they will try to compete and try to see who can find Chang'e in the moon, which is the shape of the Chang'e, and also the jade rabbit. So really there isn't a particular or specific activity that the children do, but that's pretty much what we did.
Yeah, just more like family activities as a whole. Yeah. Lily, anything, yeah.
It's so interesting because for those of us who came to America early, it was not until there's a critical mass of Chinese that we could even get yuebing mooncakes, except if you lived in San Francisco, New York, and the larger cities. So before we learned how to read Chinese, my brothers and I would sit there if someone, you know, very nicely sent us a box, and we would try to guess what was inside because we didn't know the Chinese characters. And 9 times out of 10 we missed, you know, because it was usually the lotus seed. But that was just something we did as a family because they were so rare for those early immigrants like us.
That's actually a great segue into my next question. Are there some more traditional fillings for a mooncake, or are there a variety? Is it regional? Lily, I feel like you might have an answer for this.
I don't know about that, but I will not eat a pine nut filling. I just cannot stand it. So Ms. Shan, could you help us? Because I just hate that. I'm so sorry. I know they're very expensive, but I just do not like that filling.
There are a lot of varieties of the mooncake. The most popular ones, of course, is the lotus paste or the red bean paste with the egg yolk. But there is another one which is filled with all mixed nuts, and that's actually the most popular one. It has a little bit light salty taste, and it's called 五仁. 五仁, it means 5 kinds of nuts, and that's very hard to find today in the US, but you can still find that, okay? So there are a lot of varieties, and as it evolved today, there's all kinds. But I would say the most traditional ones are those ones like the red bean paste with the egg yolk and also the 5 nuts, the 五仁. There's also a kind, in one of my slides, I actually inserted 2 pictures, okay? There is this traditional mooncake, which has the dark brown skin, and there's another kind that is a flaky, and it's called the Suzhou style mooncake. Okay, if you remember that slide, I have the 2 pictures. One is the traditional mooncake. The other kind is called the Suzhou mooncake, which has the flaky skin.
The Suzhou mooncake. In that area, especially near the Shanghai area, that one is actually called 鲜肉月饼, which is fresh meat. It's absolutely, in my own opinion, not normal. But of course, people from there would disagree. They think that's the best. It tastes good. It doesn't taste like a mooncake. It feels like a pie or something with fillings in it. It's very fulfilling. You can eat it as a dish. Since I'm from China, I can share some details about mooncakes these days. I think young people these days really dislike 五仁月饼, the 5 nuts one, because they think it doesn't taste good. The more popular ones these days is 广式月饼, mooncake.
Thank you. That's done.
Well, thank you so much to Yunhan Zhang from Valley Brook Tea, Rita Shan, Lily Liu, and ARP, and the Ruth H. Quote and Rhoda Howe Memorial Foundation, and to all the people that attended. This event has been recorded and will be available on our website and YouTube channel in a day or so. If you like this event and want to learn more about the new Chinese American Museum in DC, or find ways to support our programs, please visit our website at www.chineseamericanmuseum.org. We hope that you and your family stay safe, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.